Hello out there, and today I'm going to be doing something just a little bit different when it comes to reviewing this Tangram vector knife. Because today, as I talk about it, I'm going to be disassembling and then reassembling this model. And I wanted to do this just to do something a little bit different. You know, I've had this knife for 5-6 months now, something like that, and I've enjoyed it a lot, but I carried it mostly when I first got it, you know, in order to do a review. And then once I, got that information and I was ready to make the video, this knife just ended up in the stack of knives I need to talk about, but still haven't yet, and it never left there. And today I figured let's just get to it and talk about it, but let's do it a little bit differently than usual. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to take the knife apart, show you the guts of it, show you how the button lock mechanism works, which really isn't very complicated, but it should be a little bit more fun than just having a knife right in front of you and talking about it. So we'll do all that. And before I take it apart, though, we will hit on some of the specs and do some size comparisons and give you a little bit of background about the knife. So what we have is the Tangram Vector, like I said, and Tangram is, I guess you'd call it a subsidiary of Kizer. You know, it's not a line of knives from Kizer the way that the Vanguard line is. This is its own thing. It has its own logo. It has its own packaging, and I'll insert a little video of that down below. You can see what that looks like. It is some of the most unique packaging I've ever seen from a knife. And this is the more budget, like, style, I guess, of knife that Kizer produces. You know, it is cheaper than anything from the Vanguard line or the other Kizers, but some of these knives are just really well made, and they're not necessarily all that inexpensive. You know, this one right here is a $45 knife. You can get it on Amazon. Amazon is the go-to place to pick up Tangram knives. That's basically the hub for them, I guess. That's where almost all the sales are for them. I don't think you can see them on like Blade HQ or places like that yet. I'm not sure why, but they're really partnered with Amazon. So yeah, but on Amazon, this one goes for $45, while, you know, some of the other Tangrams I've seen have been like $20 or $25 or $30. So this one is a little bit of a more expensive one from them, but this knife, more than almost any budget knife at the same price, can masquerade as a much more expensive piece than what it is. And that's what I like about this more than anything. All right, so let's do some size comparisons and we'll talk more about that. All right, so first things first, let's bring out the Boker Lancer. I have talked about this Lancer quite a few times already, but man, I still really love that stonewash. Check that out. All right, so here's the Lancer. Both of these are essentially rocking 440 steel. This is called Japanese Akudo on the Tangram, but from everything I've read, it's essentially like a 440, and that's what we have on the Lancer as well. What else? Here is a little bit of a larger knife, the Benchmade 943, but there's that for comparison. And something more suitable right here is the Spyderco Sage 5. And we'll get a little fancy pants. And here is the Inkosi. One more knife I want to bring out is this QSP Parrot. And this really sort of illustrates the point I wanted to make about the budget knife that masquerades as something much more expensive, because these are both, you know, 440C, essentially blade steel, and the QSP is a $20-something knife, and maybe a better knife for functionality and for ergonomics, sure, but if you were to, you know, put these knives next to each other on the table and I knew nothing about them and you asked me which one was more expensive, I would definitely say this one. And if you asked me, you know, does one of these look like it could be a $75 knife, I would say absolutely, this one does. You know, this one really does look like a much more expensive knife than it is, and that kind of value goes a long way, especially since it is a very functional cutting tool as well. All right, but now all that's aside, let's just start taking apart the knife, get a look at it. What I'm rocking right here is the Kershaw TX Tool. It is a T8 driver right here. Everything on this knife is T8s except for the clip screws, which is perfect because I like having the larger screws on a knife if possible. So thank you, Tangram, for doing that on this model. When it comes to this TX tool, though, for $10, it's a pretty good little thing. It comes with a T8 driver that you see right here, it has a T6, and then it has a Phillips head and a flathead screwdriver. And so basically everything you need for basic EDC, I guess, and then also to take apart most knives. The T6 part of it didn't really hold up all that well and ended up, just getting used and beat up. But the T8 has been consistent, and so for all my T8 stuff, I use that. I have this Weehaw that I usually use for T6s, and that's just fine. But we're not going to need that today, so that's great. All right, so now that we have basically the screws out, I should be able to just pop this, right off. All right. So here we have the scale off, and you can see all the milling on these liners. Should still be able to, All right, so that's sort of cool. Just getting a look at that. Still locking up too. That's pretty neat. Yeah, so the button lock still works. For a second, it's going to pop apart. One thing I said in previous disassembly videos is that it's really good to label or keep things organized whenever you're taking apart a knife. And yeah, that's true, but one thing I forgot about is in this day and age, I mean, we all have smartphones. I'm filming on a smartphone right now. I mean, just take a picture. If you're taking apart a knife, you've never worked with a certain mechanism or something before, take a picture. Boom, there you go. Now you have it. And so you take a bunch of pictures and you'll remember what goes where and in what order. You should be all set. All right, so let's try to pull it all apart. All right. So here we go. So up top here we have the very simple mechanism, and not even a mechanism, it's just a piece that makes the locking mechanism work. It's right here, and then it's hollow on this back end, and that hollow piece just goes right into that milled out part of the liner with the spring. And that's it, piece of cake. So pretty simple. And then when it comes to the washers, we have two on each side. We have this Teflon-y plastic one that's right up against the blade, and then bronze one. So 2 and 2. Here's our blade. Here, and I'll actually just leave that close by there to make it more convenient. Here's the blade. Really beautiful blade. Reminds me of the Kershaw Echelon. I love when they do the grinds like this, where it just is like an not uneven, but it's angled. Just gives a pretty distinct blade shape. And it's also a very functional, good slicing grind, I think, especially on that Echelon at least. But yeah. Anyway, yeah, so here's the liners on the other side. You can see standoffs. One position pocket clip on this knife. It is a pretty deep carry clip, relatively at least, even though it's not like a full concealment, but it's suitable. And, no markings or anything on the clip either. One thing about the clip and the way that the knife rides, now that I bring it up, is with slick aluminum, which is what this sort of is. With slick aluminum, a lot of times when I have a knife in the pocket, I'll think, oh man, this is gonna slide around. It won't be comfortable, especially since I wear slacks at work. And in this case, no, this clip retains very, very well. So yeah, I have no problems with it moving around in my pocket. And like I said, a bit of a surprise with that, because this aluminum, while it is very attractive, it isn't necessarily the most grippy stuff. And we'll use this piece to talk about. Hopefully I'm not moving stuff and losing it all. But yeah, so talking about the scale for a second, the aluminum scales on this knife are excellent, but they are a little bit slick. This pattern here, this milling, it's comfortable and it isn't sharp, but it isn't particularly grippy either. And I'll show you how the knife fits in hand, and it is comfortable like this. And when you do have the full knife in your hand, it's not going to go anywhere, but it's also not going to give you a lot of traction like this either. So something to be aware of. Now this aluminum scale is now coming out in a blue color as well. I'm sure eventually with the popularity of this model there'll be more colors, so there's that to look forward to. One other thing to bring up about this, and I don't think I have the Caligo nearby, but comparing this aluminum to the Caligo, I carried these two knives probably the same amount of time for the first week that I had them, and the Caligo, like immediately with some use and some just action with the knife, was getting a couple little nicks in the coating on the aluminum, and it didn't look perfect after a couple days already. And this knife, I mean, you can see the scale, the coating on the scale has held up, so you still keep that classy finish, that classy look. It doesn't look like a beat up user knife, even though it's been used. So I do appreciate just the quality of that coating. It didn't bother me with the Caligo. I mean, let's be honest, I still really like that knife, but it is nice to keep that classy finish, I guess, on the scale on this knife, since it is such a classy looking piece. All right, so now let's start putting it back together. And one thing about button locks, and this is the only part of this video that I'm sort of apprehensive about. One thing about button locks is that they can be a little bit tricky, because a lot of times with them, everything sort of has to be perfectly in place for it to go back together right. And so I'm hoping that I'm able to execute that with very little struggle. Yes, I know there are people at home right now saying, "No lubrication? What is he doing? No lubrication. I can't believe it." But, I can always lubricate it afterwards. So, here we have it. And yeah, the stop pin is actually still intact right here, so hopefully, get this liner on, it should, in theory, and there we go. So that popped right on. And then this. The other end of the pivot isn't quite being agreeable. So what we'll do is we'll get the body screws in first, and sorry if I'm sort of blocking the camera, but I am looking over it right now. Yeah, not really a pro at this, but that's sort of what makes it fun. Not really an expert, so one thing to do in this situation, just come on. Yep, can't really get it lined up. Being a pain in the ass, and there we go. All right. So back together. Do some final adjustments. One thing that, I did for the ease of the video, but also just for ease in life, when you're taking a knife apart, you don't have to take out the backside screws in order to get the darn thing apart, then don't do it. Make it easy on yourself. So there we are. That's our Tangram. Really good knife. Good gents piece, but good user. as you can see, as I showed earlier, here it is with the knife completely in hand. Not too much real estate, but just a good kind of EDC, a much classier knife than what you would expect to get for 45 bucks, that's for sure. And like I said, I think the best way of putting it is that it can definitely butt heads with knives that are much more expensive and get away with it, especially in the looks department. So really impressed with this one, guys. Any questions, comments, complaints, suggestions, let me know down below. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much for watching. I will talk with you soon. Have a good one.